in a closed-door congressional hearing this afternoon about alleged anti-Trump bias in the Justice Department. We start off this evening with Chief Intelligence Correspondent Catherine Herridge on Capitol Hill, digesting all of this. Good evening, Catherine.
That's right, Brett, and good evening. Within the last hour, we've had those two key filings in the Cohen case, one from the U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of New York, the other for the special counsel. The recommendation for Cohen is significant jail time, about 4 years, and a fine of $500,000. One of the filings from the special counsel does give us an indication of the kind of information Cohen offered on Russia. And that section of the filing reads in part, Cohen provided the SCO, the special counsel office, with useful information concerning certain discrete Russia-related matters, core to its investigation that he obtained by virtue of his regular contact with company executives during the campaign. Cohen provided relevant and useful information concerning his contacts with persons connected to the White House during the 2017 and 2018 time period. Meantime, here on Capitol Hill, a short time ago, the former FBI Director James Comey wrapped up 6 hours of testimony, and at that point, he was ready to speak to reporters.
When you read the transcript, you will see that we're talking again about Hillary Clinton's emails, for heaven's sake, so I'm not sure we need to do this at all. But I'm trying to respect the institution and to answer questions in a respectful way. You'll see I did that in the transcript.
Republicans said the private interview under oath is designed to drill down on the FBI's actions during the 2016 election, when both campaigns were under federal investigation, including contacts between former top Justice Department official Bruce Ohr and the man behind the infamous Trump dossier.
We learned from Bruce Ohr that Christopher Steele had told him he was desperate to stop President Trump from being president. I want to know when James Comey knew that.
Democrats say the goal is to damage the special counsel and promise to shut down the House GOP investigation when they take over the majority in coming weeks.
It's a waste of time to start with. The entire purpose of this investigation is to get a dispersion in the real investigation, which is Mueller.
Just 2 hours into the session, a senior committee Republican cried foul, claiming a government lawyer shut down key questions.
Director Comey is in there with 2 attorneys. I would say at his gleeful acceptance, instructed that he will not be answering a great many questions that are clearly items at the core of our investigations.
But House Democrats say little of note was learned from today's private session.
It's just been a wild goose chase. It's been a rerun of the same questions and answers through multiple interviews. I like TV reruns, but this is getting a little ridiculous.
Okay, on Comey, what reporters were told is that we do expect him back up here for another session of this transcribed under oath interview in about 2 weeks' time. And literally, since we've been on the air, there's been breaking news in the Manafort filing. We've just have an order filed by the judge in that case in Washington. Part of that filing that goes to the special counsel allegations that he violated his deal will be kept under seal, but it does appear that part of the filing will be public. We're trying to get onto the website. As you can anticipate, it's jammed with traffic, but as soon as we have new information, Brett, we'll bring that to you.
Okay, Catherine Herridge live on the Hill. Catherine, thanks. Just moments ago, we saw a tweet about 3 minutes ago from the President of the United States, Donald J. Trump, at Real Donald J. Trump, totally clears the president. Thank you! Exclamation point. Assume he's talking about all of this. Don't have any more detail on that, but that was the tweet that just came out. Let's dig into this filing, these filings, what we know, what we don't know. Let's get some analysis right now from George Washington University law professor Jonathan Turley. Jonathan, I want to start with the Russia part of the special counsel filing and the breakdown, as Catherine mentioned, of these 4 ways Cohen helps. And we've got it in a bullet point here. It's new information that we didn't know, but what's your reading of that particular part?
Some of this we've known about, obviously. There was this Moscow project, which itself is not a crime. President Trump's been open about the fact that he was continuing as a businessman, as a backup plan if he didn't make the successful run for the White House. But there are some aspects of this that should be pretty worrisome for the White House. One of the things I thought was interesting that stood out, if you take these 4 areas where Cohen is found to have cooperated. 2 of them you could put under sort of collusion allegation categories, and 2 you could put under obstruction types of allegations. So they're about even there. But at one point they talk about how Cohen had a contact in Russia who said he had high-ranking connections, and that he promised, quote, campaign political synergy between the 2 governments. What's interesting about those 3 words, campaign political synergy, we haven't seen that before. The quote from Cohen is political synergy. The special counsel adds the word campaign, making it clear that, to me at least, this was not about the Moscow project. This was about the campaign and political synergy there. What is meant by those 3 words, I don't know. But as a criminal defense attorney, they really stood out to me, because that's the first link, as tenuous as it may be, that we've seen.
Now, the special counsel says that Cohen did cooperate. He started out not cooperating, but eventually he does in the special counsel filing. The U.S. attorney from the Southern District of New York says, you know what, we want substantial jail time because we don't think he came to the table with everything. In their filing on page 11, they get into this campaign finance question. That Cohen played a central role in 2 similar schemes to purchase the rights to stories, each from women who claim to have had an affair with individual one. This is Donald Trump. So as to suppress the stories and thereby prevent them from influencing the election. With respect to both payments, Cohen acted with the intent to influence the 2016 presidential election. Cohen coordinated his actions with 1 or more members of the campaign, including through meetings and phone calls about the fact, nature, and timing of the payments. In particular, and as Cohen himself has now admitted, with respect to both payments, he acted in coordination with and at the direction of individual one. As a result of Cohen's actions, neither woman spoke to the press prior to the election. Individual one, again, is Donald Trump.
Right.
The implications of that.
Well, it seems to me that this is directly implicating the president in a campaign finance violation. You can't possibly read this and conclude that this idea sort of sprang out of the head of Zeus for Michael Cohen. He was doing this certainly to benefit Donald Trump, but they suggest that he did this in coordination with Donald Trump.
And direction of.
And direction of. And they go on to say that this was an effort to influence the election from the shadows. So they're saying that these 2 individuals, including the President of the United States, tried to influence the election through the shadows. So what we know at a minimum is this is going to be part of that report going to Congress, and it's going to hit hard. I mean, it's clear that they are saying, they actually say Michael Cohen is credible now. You know, they list all of his lies, his history of deception and greed, but they say now we think he's telling the truth about this stuff. So this is going to be what we see in that part of the report that gets issued from the special counsel, and they are directly implicating the President of the United States. Now, federal election campaign violations are rarely criminal matters, but they can be a crime. The issue is not how serious is this crime to prosecute. The issue is the special counsel has come as close as you could get to accusing the president of a conspiracy to commit a crime. If the special counsel...
You're saying like an unindicted co-conspirator?
Yeah,
filing?
I mean it's everything but the name. You know, it's pretty hard to avoid that Donald Trump is all over this in the language picked by the prosecutors. Now, the problem is not that the crime itself is a huge one. The problem is that if the president engaged in any actions to conceal that crime,
and there's evidence of it,
right, then it becomes much more serious, because then you can have obstruction issues that are real ones. It's obstructing a crime. So the secondary crime could actually be more serious.
What the special counsel was told to do was to get to the bottom of Russia's interference in the 2016 election. In that Russia section, we see the beginnings, but we don't see all the puzzle pieces here.
Yeah, I think there's good news here as well, in the sense that, you know, the thing that caught my eye was that synergy conversation with some unknown Russian. But it also says that nothing came out of that. Cohen didn't even follow up on it because he was already working on the Moscow project. Now, it seems to me that you could argue that Cohen at least viewed this as all about the Moscow project. He had a line going on there, didn't even pick up the phone essentially to call back this guy. If there was real collusion